You may notice I'm in a much different location today. I am in Tegernsee, Germany, which is a couple-hour train ride from Regensburg. And yesterday, I bought what's called a Bavarian pass. And a Bavarian pass is just a day pass on the trains. You can go anywhere in Bavaria. So kind of all-inclusive for a day. And the only caveat of that pass is that you're only allowed to start your journey at 9 a.m. This kind of like mitigates the morning traffic. So I asked the German teammate I was with, I was like, hey, if I leave at 8, are they going to kick me off the train? What might happen? And he was like, nah, you're an American. Like, just play dumb. You'll be fine. So, okay. So I get on the train this morning at 7:50 and they come through checking the tickets, and the guy that comes through, he's like, nah, yeah, you're fine. Okay. A couple seconds later, a lady comes stomping down. Bop, 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 just kind of yelling at me. And what's funny is 10 minutes previous to that, I was writing in a journal on the train about, some of the things I want to talk about today. One of the things I had written down was Germans don't bend the rules. And here I am trying to bend the rules. And this lady comes running down. She told me my options were to pay 14 euros and get off at the next stop and wait an hour at the next stop for the next train to go to Munich, because that would have been after 9 a.m. Or I could get a $60 ticket and then I get nothing. Those were her words, I get nothing. And so between those two options, I paid 14 euros. I got off at the next stop, which was 8 minutes down the road, and I spent the morning sitting in just the middle of nowhere for about an hour, and then got on the next train here. I got here, and then I hiked 8 miles up a steep incline and came back down, and then I hopped in this lake that you're looking at right here, which is beautiful and pretty chilly, but it felt fantastic after an 8-mile journey. And so that is a little bit of the backstory as to how, that's the whole backstory, as to how we got to where we are right now. And as I sit here, I'm recalling on the question that I left with last week, and it was, what is your favorite type of silence? There's so many different types of silence. Ultimately, you could see it as the same thing in terms of like quiet, like a lack of, or, a fulfillment of space. And it came down to me to 2 different types of silences. The first being the silence between 2 people who are just like in sync. It could be a friend, it could be romantically, it could be family, it could be someone that you've never even really talked to, but even like the initial glance at them is like a comfortable silence. And there's something about that type of silence where the frequencies are just kind of so aligned that nothing needs to be said. And I know that silence to be different than another type of silence with someone, because you can feel when there's friction within the silence. And I don't know if it goes any deeper than that, but I feel friction within some silences. And it takes me back to Pulp Fiction, movie Pulp Fiction, when John Travolta has to take out his boss's wife, and they're sitting at the restaurant, and she mentions something about silences and comfortable silences. And that really stuck with me after watching that movie. And I think it's pretty easy for me to notice a comfortable silence versus an uncomfortable one. And for that reason, comfortable silences between two people is one of my favorite silences. The other is the silence after holding on an exhale. And if you've never experienced that, you don't know. So if you're listening right now or watching, which I really would suggest to watch because the view here is incredible. We can just practice one together. So we might take 2 or 3 reset breaths. So we'll just inhale, exhale, take another inhale, exhale. And then on this next exhale, just go halfway out and just hold on the exhale. Inhale, exhale. You can inhale and exhale. Maybe you felt a difference in that silence and maybe you didn't. But for me, holding on an exhale and feeling that silence and that creation of space is one of my favorite types of silences. Even right there. I could hear the lady in the background talking to her kid. Maybe you can too. Hear the water bumping up against the wall. I can hear the chatter of the restaurant. All the little things that make up the moment that you're in that maybe we don't depict. And it's interesting that when I do a silence on an exhale hold, it kind of gives you the ability to tune into one of those sounds. And I think it's more of an internal silence than anything because there is sound going on around me. But it's just the internal silence that's created, and you learn to kind of create the layers within the sound, right? Like the woman and her child are the closest to me. And then the water would be the closest to me. The woman and her child would be second closest, and the restaurant would be the third. You can kind of learn to layer them out, and maybe I really hone in on the sound of the restaurant that's farthest away and choose to bypass the sounds of the water and the woman behind me. Or you could choose any of them, or choose to allow all three to come in. And I feel like that's a skill that I attained through holding on exhales, which I did a lot. And I don't recommend it doing, a full Wim Hof session while in the water. But I used to go sit in the ocean in Seattle, and I would do the full Wim Hof sessions, and I would hold on the exhale. And I became really attuned to the sound of the water. I think that's just stuck with me in terms of the observational skill of listening, quieting down the mind in order to create space and listen. And maybe that silence right there gave you the opportunity to kind of think about, what's your type of silence? Now we've got 2 ladies behind us, so I don't know, it's an experiment to record outside. We'll see how it goes. If I can isolate the audio, hopefully it works. It's all just an experiment. It's a thought experiment. And as the boat, heads away from shore, I'll dive into the word of the week, which, following kind of the historical trend that we've been on, the word of the week is praxis. I'll give you a definition of praxis. From Greek praxis meaning practice or action. It refers to the process of exacting theory or belief through lived experience. It is the embodiment of knowledge through intentional, consistent action. The embodiment of knowledge through intentional, consistent action. And as I dove more into the word, I ended up coming across like 2 other words that I think really help lend to the strength of praxis. The first being theoria, and I might be pronouncing these wrong. Theoria, which is theory. And then poiesis, which is the making of. And then you have praxis, which is putting into action. And you think about any endeavor that we pursue, that I pursue specifically, it starts with a theory, starts with a thought, a curiosity, a what if. And then I go into the making stage where maybe it's the creation of, but I still have ownership over it. It's still mine. I haven't presented it to the universe in a sense. And you move into praxis, and that's essentially presenting your theory to the world through something tangible, something that can be heard, seen, touched, felt, tasted, smelled. And as we move farther away from theory, so going back and starting at theory, it's a very comfortable space to be in theory. It's essentially, it's yours or mine. You have complete ownership over it. At least I feel like I do at that moment. I have this theory, I'm sitting with it, and it's very comfortable. There's no what ifs about it. It's just, I know it to be true because I've thought of it. And then you go into poiesis, which is the making of, and you get a little farther from the comfortability that you had with the theory, because now you're putting it out somewhat, you're making it tangible. You're taking another step forward. You're turning this theory into something that can be sensed. Whether that be any of the things I listed before, any of our senses. And moving into praxis, the way I see it is it's really no longer yours. You're presenting your theory to the world, and it's open for interpretation from the universe. And this is also the stage where obviously the most growth is going to take place, because you're going to get the most universal feedback, which is why it's the most uncomfortable, which is also why as we move farther away from theory, the level of comfortability decreases, which is no doubt why the level of growth is going to increase. And just, some of if you think of it as a wheel, right? We have theory, making, praxis in a wheel, and it's continual. The wheel can slow down or operate at various speeds, or one rotation may take longer than others. But I must move the wheel forward, both physically and metaphorically. It has to continue to spin, no matter how long that rotation takes. The unknown lives inside of praxis. The further I get from theory, the less control I have, the more trust that is required. And inside of praxis, there's no losing or failing, because it's a wheel. There's no end. Just continual effort. Continual effort. And praxis is a byproduct of theory and poiesis, yet practice itself it's its own step. Just because you have 1 and 2 doesn't mean that praxis is gonna take place. It's a very intentional step, which, going back to the definition, an embodiment of knowledge through intentional, consistent action. And understanding that there is no losing. Taking the action is the step in itself. Making the choice to grow through the universal feedback, through putting it out into the universe. It's just a beautiful thing, and it's something I think I've grown a lot more comfortable with in the uncomfortable, specifically over the past few months, is just having theories and then putting them into action. And the great part is that there is no losing. Like, you're never gonna know. Whether it's, quick success or, and it depends on what your definition of success is. But putting it out there in the intentional, consistent practice is all that matters. And I think if you have a theory and you think it's worthwhile, like when I have a theory that I think is worthwhile, there's no other option but to pursue that. And as you continue to let that wheel rotate or push the wheel forward, I learned that, some theories are meant to stay in the theory stage. And my level of awareness and recognition becomes much higher as I continue to complete that circle from theory to making to action. Right? If you never complete the circle, or you never take the steps to complete the circle, it's impossible to know or have any understanding of what the makings of a potential good theory could be. And also, we just never know. But I think through the completion of more circles, I begin to just have a better understanding of the potential, possibilities within that theory. And obviously, it's never ending. You don't know, but there is a heightened level of awareness and skill and the recognition that occurs from taking that step. That's where growth happens. I saw there was a quote that praxis is how character is formed. And through intentional, consistent action, we form our character. So without that praxis, there's somewhat of characterless in a sense. I have to be willing to put myself out there. And it's going to lead into the word. I was between that and another word for this week, but I think that'll lead into next week's word very nicely. I mean, what a beautiful place this is. Sun's setting. Sun's not setting. We still have a lot of time, actually. I mean, to think that the day started with, the day started with getting kicked off the train. And what's crazy is, when I got kicked off that train, I thought in my head, I thought something good is going to happen today. I knew something good was going to happen today. And there's been plenty of good things that have happened today, but sitting right here, this is pretty good. And I recognized that I needed, some time alone to reset, because I think I know from playing sports that, it's a very social endeavor. And, I have to have those resets, those days of being solo. And also, I think that, the ability to figure things out on my own at times can be missed when you're continually with, a team. And so even today, getting kicked off the train, I had to figure out, okay, when's the next train coming? Do I have the right ticket? But there's a level of confidence that comes with being able to figure things out on your own, and teamwork and pairs and all those things are very beneficial as well to character development. But there has to be a certain level of trust within myself that I'm able to figure something out. And so today was very much about going on a solo adventure and just seeing what happened and just figuring it out. And it started with getting kicked off the train. You could pay $60 and you get nothing. Okay. Man, the hike today was high elevation quick. And one of my friends recently posed the question as to why mountains have such a like mystical or spiritual feel to them. Like, why have they been revered for so long as places of enlightenment or whatever it may be? And as the first thought that comes to mind is that it's a closer point to heaven. You know, you're connecting earth and heaven. And I can see how for a long time when people saw mountains for the first time, that could have been what they thought. The other thought that I have, and I had it as I was ascending today, was the level of like discipline and dedication that it takes to go up a mountain or any type of incline, right? There's patience, there's discipline, there's all these requirements that come with reaching that point or, you know, embarking on that journey. And I just learn more about myself every time that I embark on those journeys. And specifically an incline is going to be more difficult than a flat surface. And to get to the top of a mountain or to get into, you know, really into a trail or whatever it may be and to go up that incline, there is a certain level of character development that happens from that, and that's part of praxis. Praxis. You know, taking action. I have a theory that I want to go on this adventure, right? I have a theory that I want to go out and about today. Okay, then I go through the making process, which is picking out the trail, picking out the train times, preparing the food, all of those things. And then praxis comes, which is, you know, embarking on the journey itself. Waking up early, getting on the train, getting kicked off the train, getting back on the train, going up this steep incline, hiking into the mountains, and getting all these different angles of down below and then coming back down. I get to jump in this lake, hang out. Now I'm just sitting on this daybed, chatting into a microphone. Pretty good. Pretty good. I'm liking this outside vibe. Feel real settled in. Be interested to hear what you guys think as far as the tonality and the presentation of thoughts. But it's been quite a great day. There's actually one of my favorite restaurants, is in Munich. And I'll pass back through Munich on the way home, so I'm gonna stop there. It's like the butcher type place. It's Arabic food. And so it's really good meats and fresh vegetables and rice. It's fantastic. So I've been looking forward to that as well. Right now I'm just looking at the sun shine through the clouds. There's mountains all ahead of me. And yeah, I think going back to the mountain thought is just the level of dedication it takes to get there. There's realizations that are made, and then the attunement to nature that you come into while being in that space that's so isolated is thought-provoking and space creating as well. So mountains are sick, and I plan to, you know, complete the wheel on a lot more trips up, around, and through mountains as well. And maybe, you know, the people behind me are getting kind of loud, so we'll wrap this one up. And that leads me to the question that we'll head into next week with. Of everything you have lost in your life, given the opportunity, what is one thing you would take back? And I think that could be physical, it could be spiritual, it could be emotionally. Just one thing that you've lost that you would take back. And this is not a question I came up with. This is actually a question I was asked recently. I thought it was such a good question that we will use it as the question going into next week. One more time. Of everything you have lost in your life, given the opportunity, what is one thing you would take back? I don't know if, is take back the right word? What is one thing you would retrieve, from that lost bin? Hopefully you get the point. If not, you'll come up with an answer for yourself, I'm sure. The answer probably already popped into your brain. 7:51 to Munich. If I would have just gotten on the 9:05, but then if I would have gotten on the 9:05, I, wouldn't have made some friends on the trail, wouldn't have, who knows? Who knows? I just knew something good was going to happen after I got kicked off that train. And today has just been very nice. There's days that I believe are meant to be spent alone, in the sense of watching the sun rise by yourself, watching it set by yourself, and just gaining the introspections that come through that level of solitude. And today was one of those days. And then you're able to, at least I feel like I'm able to be the best version of myself for other people after those days. And it's the recognition that those days are necessary, and when they're necessary, to take them. And then it comes back to the wheel of theory making praxis over and over. And the more that I complete that wheel or circle, the heighten my awareness there's a word fart, brain fart, theory, praxis. No, another brain fart. We got to wrap this one up soon. Theory, making, praxis. The more that I allow that wheel to continue to spin and come to completion, the better my awareness and skill gets in recognizing theories that need to go to the making stage, and then, going from the making stage to praxis, just like the hike today. And so what a beautiful day it is. I'd be interested to hear how you all enjoyed this outside episode, as I plan to, obviously travel a lot more. And I think this would be a cool little niche way to film and podcast and video. And so, we'll finish it with the question once more: of everything you've lost in your life, given the opportunity, what is one thing you would take back?